Hey everyone, the fly I'm going to be tying for you today is my Jimi Hendrickson. This is a Mayfly pattern I came up with a little over a year ago. I used it a ton last year. Anytime there's some sort of a Mayfly hatch out there, whether it was a small blue-winged olive up to a March brown and really everything in between. Anytime I saw a Mayfly activity, if I was throwing a dry dropper or a single dry, I was always going to this pattern and I had awesome success on it. And the beauty about this fly, it uses two materials that I love. One for the body, it's hare's ear, and the other is CDC for the wing. And really anytime I can incorporate CDC into a dry fly, I do, just because it looks so realistic, a lot of movement out of it. And really the key to this fly is the upright wing. When you see duns floating on the surface, they usually have that sail. And so when the trout is underneath looking up, this is what they're looking at. They're just looking at the body. The CDC out front represents the legs, and you get a lot of movement from that. But it just looks really, really realistic. And I'm going to tell you a little bit how I came up with the name at the end, and just tell you a little bit more about the fly. But let's get a hook in the vise and tie one up for you. So the dry fly hook I have in is a Fulling Mill 50/50, the ultimate dry fly hook. You can use whatever dry fly hook you like. The thread that we're going to be using is, this is a Nano Silk by Semperfli. This is an 18-aught. I really like the Nano Silk. I'm actually using more and more of this. It's super thin, super strong. So just go ahead, and this is an olive. I'm not sure I said that, but you can use any darker, black, olive, something like that. So for the tailing fiber, this is a dark Pardo CDL. I use about 4 or 5 fibers. Just make sure the tips are aligned. And the one thing about mayflies is if you look at a mayfly when they're hatched, is the tail is at least as long as the hook shank, and usually it's longer than that. So it's usually longer than the body itself. So I err on the side of longer and not shorter, because this is a really realistic looking fly. And so I like that tail length right there. And what I do a lot is anytime I'm looking at any sort of a pattern, especially a dry fly, boy, the best thing to do is just Google an image of it, look at the dry fly, and then you can compare your dry to the actual picture, and you'll see that mayflies have a really long tail. So for the wire, we're just going to put a really light wire rib on. I like using something very small. This is once again Semperfli. This is a 0.1 millimeter in brown. It's if you're a UTC guy, it's an extra small, so it's very thin. So now you can see I don't have the wire all the way to the front. I had the wire really kind of towards the middle, because you don't need it up front there. Let's take it back. Now, the one thing I'm going to do is, that tail got wrapped up right there. The one thing I'm going to do is, when I take my wire to the back, before I put my hare's ear on, my body material on, what I do is I take one wrap behind the wire. And what that's going to do is, when I start counter ribbing it, it's going to prevent, a lot of times when you counter rib, the wire wants to grab that tail and kind of cock it off to a side. So if you take that one wrap behind the wire and then back in front, it's going to prevent that from happening. So for the body, I'm using a Mad Rabbit dubbing in a natural hare's ear. You can use whatever hare's ear you like, but I like natural. And this Jimi Henrickson, this is the truest form. The beauty about this pattern is this is kind of the base. So you can change the color of the body to represent whatever mayfly you're representing. So if you want a sulfur, use yellow hare's ear. If you want a blue-winged olive, use olive hare's ear. And you're just varying the size of the fly. So we're putting a very thin noodle on here, really thin noodle. You don't have to worry about this big taper. So that is a really thin noodle right there. And we're going to go ahead and advance this up. Now I don't want it going past I go about halfway or maybe slightly past halfway. So I was a little too much hairs here, so you could always take it off. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and counter rib this. This is a size 12 hook, and you know, you're going to have about 6 or 7 counter wraps up. Go ahead and twist that off. Now, before I put the wing in, I just want to trim this up a little bit. Get these flyers off. That looks pretty good. So for the next thing is we're going to put our CDC wing on, and this is really important. So first of all, I don't know if you've noticed, but CDC is becoming harder, really quality CDC is becoming harder and harder to find. I found out that Fulling Mill, this premium CDC, is pretty good stuff. Now for the color of the wing, I like natural gray. So you want to look for something that's natural, gray, dun, maybe a natural mallard, something like that, but you want to keep it in that kind of dun natural color. Now the thing about CDC is it's not all created equal. So you're going to get a bag of CDC and you really got to sift through it and get really good feathers out. So don't think you need to use every feather in the bag. Just really pay attention and get really good feathers, really good webbing out. And what you want is you want 4 feathers, and you can see that these are good feathers, right? So every feather you can see has a curve to it, right? So we're gonna stack 4 feathers, but we want 2 going that way and we want 2 going that way. So we're gonna have our feathers look like that. Now I've taken 4 feathers there. You can see 2 are going that way, 2 are going that way. The one thing you want to do is you want to make sure the stems are pretty consistent and lined up. So the stem is actually a really important part of this fly because it's going to add to the buoyancy of the fly. So make sure that the tips are fairly aligned, but the stems are kind of stacked on top of one another. Now we're going to stroke these back. So we're going to stroke the fibers back. And this is honestly the toughest part of the fly right here, putting the wing on. So when I lay these feathers down, you can see the end of the tail. I want the top or the tips of the CDC to extend back to the tail. Now we're going to trim this, but this is the easiest starting point. So just stroke these feathers back, or the fibers, I should say. We're going to grab it, and then we're going to take 1 around and pull up, okay? 2 around, pull up. You don't want to pull down because it's going to pull the feathers off. So you want to pull up. It's still going to want to twist on you, so you got to be really delicate and take your time. We're going to pull up. We're going to take a wrap behind, kind of tug it in there. And when you pull, when you go behind, pull this way, okay? So pull up against it. Once again, you're just going to kind of wrap it around a couple times. I'm holding and I'm pulling this way. So I'm holding and pulling at an angle to really lock it in there. And that's the beauty about using this nano silk. It's actually really thin, so it doesn't bulk up on you. So it's really important that you're using a really thin thread. So you can clean this up right there. Now, what we're gonna do is we wanna start posting it, okay? So just be careful here. And we're gonna start making a post. So you're just gonna wrap around, tug. That's 3. And if you do it at least 4 or 5 times, you're gonna start seeing it's gonna stop twisting around on the hook. See, it's not twisting at all. Once you start posting it up, it's gonna stop twisting and it's gonna sit upright. And you can see that is the profile from underneath that you want. So you've got that upright wing, and that's exactly what the Trout's looking at. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to cut our wing and trim it to shape. So if you look at a Mayfly wing, it actually curves like this and like that. So it curves into the body. And what's really interesting about a Mayfly wing is it takes up almost the whole body, depending on what Mayfly it is. But the wing itself almost lays against the entire back of the body. So that's what we want to do. We want to trim it. And the best thing to do is, you can see the end of the hare's ear right here towards the bend of the hook. So that's my marker. So what I do is I'll turn it and I'll start the cut from the end of the hare's ear and I go back towards the curve of the hook. That's the best starting point. So I'm at the hare's ear and now I'm going to cut at an angle towards the back of the hook. So it's going to look like that. Okay, you can see those flyers. You can go ahead and take care of that. Now, the height, and we're going to trim it up some more. So the height, what is the height? So I like the height of the wing to be at least the length of the shank of the hook. And in a lot of cases, it's about a shank and a half. So it's about a hook and a half long. So if you can see the hook right there, okay, I actually like to err on the side of too long than not long enough, okay? So I'd rather have it too long than too short. So I kind of just eyeball it. Now I'm going to turn it back and I'm going to cut right across the top. Just like that, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to curve it here and I'm going to curve it there. So I'm just going to take my scissors, curve it a little there, and now right here, I'm going to take off that hard edge, just like that. And what I don't want you to do is just go overboard. And that's what I see. A lot of people, they'll start trimming, and suddenly you trim it down to nothing. But remember, that's what the Trout is looking at right there. But, you know, just because I'm a little OCD, I'm going to trim a couple of these flyers right there. So that wing is absolutely perfect right there. So the next step for the thorax, I'm using Hairline Purple UV Ice Dub. That is what really makes the Jimi Hendrickson. But don't overdo it, because that's what I see people do. They'll overdub the thorax on dry fly. So just, we want a real thin noodle. That's probably about an inch long. Just slide it up. And we're going to take the first one behind it like that. So just one behind, and now we're going to move forward. So that was about an inch of ice dub right there. So for the next step, we're going to take, I just take one long CDC feather, and we are going to put it in our clip. And you can see that is probably about an inch and a half of CDC. And we're going to make the legs on this. And what we want to do, actually go ahead and advance your thread back. So we're going to counterclockwise spin it. Take your bodkin, and if you kind of stroke it back like this, you can really get it flat. And then you just want to find that center spot and go ahead and split it right there. Take our CDC. And just right here, this is where you just kind of want to push it and get it as close to the edge here, to the thread as possible. And then lay the bobbin over your finger, spin it. So hold it, pinch it, and push up. And you can see how it spins, and you get this really nice cord of CDC. So for the first couple wraps, we're going to go around the back of the wing here, and we're going to wrap until we get to the CDC. Now you can see that the CDC is there. Our first wrap is behind. That's one. Now we're going to go forward. And don't worry about it looking messy. Just as you wrap, go forward towards the eye of the hook, stroke it back, keep stroking it back. All right. And we're gonna clean all that up. Now, the way I like to end it, as I tie a lot of my dry flies like this, even my nymphs, I don't like to make a lot of whip finishes at the front because that's when people they crowd the eye of the hook, or the whip finishes fall off the front. So the easiest and cleanest way to finish, in my opinion, any dry fly is just super glue it. I just put a little dab on there, stroke this stuff back. You can really control it. And right there, just hold it for 5 seconds or so, pull it, boom, and then just snip it off. Now, for the last thing, I am going to just kind of get rid of, stroke some back, get rid of these tangles. I'll take my scissors and I'll just kind of make it flush here. I don't cut a lot off, and there is your finished Jimi Henrickson. So this CDC out of the front, when it's sitting on the surface of the water, the beauty about it is when you look at a Mayfly, and I do encourage you to look at an image on Google, you can just Google it, you can see that the body actually sits in the film, and then the front of the Mayfly has the legs sitting out front. So all of these right here will sit out in front. Gives a lot of movement, and it's really, really fishy looking, and just honestly, it's irresistible. Now, these look a little long. I actually like to keep them long, and you can always pluck them out on the water if you feel like, for whatever reason, you don't like it. But I actually like it long. They sit out there and they move around, and it is a real fish catcher. I'll tell you a quick story. So I fished this a lot last year, like I said, and I was out west, and this is the beauty about CDC. I was fishing this one area. There was this big log, and it was this big eddy. It was actually really a still eddy, and the water was not moving, and there was this foam line coming down, and there was a lot of isonychias hatching, and the wind was actually blowing these dun isos over into this still eddy. And I could see the trout rising there. So I came around the back and I was casting into it, and my fly wasn't drifting. It was just sitting there. And anytime there was a gust of wind, this wing, you could see it moving, and then boom, a trout would grab it. And that's the beauty about CDC. It's just so realistic. And that's what duns do. They sit on the water, and you'll see their wings do this in a breeze. So super realistic. The way I came up with the name of this fly is out west. I tied this fly. I didn't have a name for it. And out west, there's a big fly, really popular. It's called the Purple Haze. So when I made this fly and I put a little purple in it, I thought, how fitting, the Jimi Hendrickson. So I hope this video was helpful. If you liked it, I appreciate if you give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave it below. I'm happy to help you out. If you like what I'm doing, I'd appreciate if you would subscribe. And as always, tight lines, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye.